Welcome back into the Daily Dose. I'm Jeff Hansen. As always, the show's brought to you by GiveMLBrigham.com and by CougarSportsInsider.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Appreciate you guys, your guys' support. Appreciate you guys fueling the algorithm. It's been a wonderful, wonderful offseason, but the season, the real live football season, is finally here. BYU kicks off against Sam Houston State tomorrow night at LaVell Edwards Stadium. It's time to talk a little bit about what I think is going to happen in this game. I know we've talked a ton about the game, but this is purely my opinion on how I think this one plays out. Week 1 games, they're weird. They're even playing against a team who you should beat. Week 1 games can get weird. Now, in no way am I predicting a BYU loss. That would be crazy talk. Let's go back to like our 8th grade geometry classes. In 8th grade, we're filling out proofs, right? You remember proofs? They were obnoxious. They were awful. You had to show every step of the work, and then you had to fill out on the other side of the bracket why you were doing it. It was dumb. I hated it. But the one thing I liked about proofs is I always got partial credit because the first proof that you had to prove was a given. You just had to write the equation down, and the number 1 was a given. I always got given right. And now let's establish our proof formula here for BYU. I think a BYU win is a given. No way should anybody be predicting, even insinuating that BYU is going to lose this game. Now, if we can all accept that as a given, do we all accept? Do you accept? I accept. Let's move forward. If we all accept that as a given, now let's start to unravel this thing a little bit. BYU will win, but you can still win the game on the scoreboard, and it can feel like a loss going into the locker room. Let's all remember BYU beat Portland State 20-6 in 2017, and even though that was a win, that felt like an ominous sign of the dreadful 2017 season that was to come at that time. So what does BYU have to do on Saturday night in order to not only win on the field and on the scoreboard, but to win in our hearts? The spread in Las Vegas. Now, I'm not advocating that anybody go and gamble. I'm a gambling kind of guy myself, but if that's not you, that's fine. But let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the data, because there's a lot of really smart odds makers looking at math and looking at all the things that they know and trying to project a score. The game opened up was BYU with a 22.5 point, or as a 22.5 point favorite. That line has shrunk to this week. It was mostly at 20.5 at most sports books, and now it's down to about 19 as we are a little more than 24 hours away from kickoff. The line is shrinking. That's mostly about money movement and Vegas trying to balance themselves out. But you get the idea that about a 3-score game is what Las Vegas was expecting, and most bettors are looking at that and saying, maybe not quite that many points. So, okay, maybe this is a closer game than most people think. I've seen lots of projections out there. BYU, by 35 points. BYU hangs a 50 burger on Sam Houston. I don't know that that's going to happen. 1, because week 1 is weird. 2, because Sam Houston's a little bit better than most people realize and think that they are. And 3, look at what happened to a team like Arizona State last night. Arizona State nearly lost to Southern Utah. I think it was 24-21 was the final score in that game. They had a heavy rain delay and lots of weird things in that game. There's no way SUU and Arizona State are about 3 points apart in terms of talent, but weird things can happen. Now, like BYU, Arizona State had a ton of transfer talent injected into their roster last year, or over the offseason, rather. They have a new coaching staff, new schemes, and they're trying to figure out who they are. Now, there's some off-the-field stuff, too, with bowl bans and things like that are impacting that Arizona State team. So it's not a complete apples-to-apples comparison, but there's some similarities and maybe some pitfalls that Arizona State nearly fell into that BYU could look at and try to avoid. There's a lot of chemistry questions that, while I think BYU's chemistry is going to be really good, they've got to figure that out on the field. BYU, throughout fall camp, you don't really handle any adversity. What's going to happen when Sam Houston State, maybe they get the ball to open the game and they go out and they score a quick touchdown because it's a new defensive scheme, a bunch of new players. Maybe BYU could be losing 7-0, with 10 minutes to go in the first quarter. It's nothing to panic about, but that's the first adversity that BYU really will have felt. How is Keaton Slovis going to respond? Right now, he's really confident. Everybody's saying the right things in camp. But what happens when he throws an interception? He's been prone to throw interceptions. He will throw an interception in the future. Tom Brady throws interceptions. So, how is that team going to respond when that adversity hits? Aaron Roderick has talked about this over the last couple of weeks that he doesn't really know. I mean, that's really what the gut check test is for teams. And in week one, anything can happen. So, what do I think is going to happen? I think this game, again, the given, BYU is going to win this game. I think this game is closer than people think. Here's why I think BYU covers the spread. I don't think they win by more than maybe 24 points, maybe 28 points. This isn't going to be some colossal blowout, but I do think BYU wins at the score at the end of the day. BYU will win by 24, 28 points because this is a late night kickoff. It's going to be late for Sam Houston. It is at altitude. There's expected to be some weather and things like that. And ultimately, I think BYU was bigger, more conditioned to the altitude, to Provo, to playing in front of what this environment will be like inside LaVell Edwards Stadium. So I think BYU cruises in the second half, and that's where they really pull away. But I think in this first half, I think you could see this game almost be knotted up at halftime, be a really, really tight game. And when people go into, I guess when the teams go into the locker room, I think people could look at this and say, what is going on with BYU? Why are they not as good as we thought they would be? Is this a sign of a dreadful Big 12 debut? I don't think we should read into it like that. I think we should probably expect a close game in the first half as BYU figures out who they are. They figure out not problems, but figure out what their chemistry is to look like. Expect a close first half. And then in the second half, expect BYU to pull away. I think BYU covers. Maybe Sam Houston State gets a late, touchdown late in the fourth quarter. That's kind of a meaningless score and they cover. I think it will be that close. But yeah, 24, 28 points. That's kind of where I'm expecting BYU to perform on the scoreboard. Now let's look at individual performances. I don't think this is a game where Aiden Robbins runs for 200 yards. I think that Aaron Roderick wants to throw the ball. And we know a little bit more about who Aiden Robbins is as a runner. And we know a little bit more about what this BYU offensive line will look like. He will get a lot of run. Aiden Robbins will get his chance to get his numbers and really establish the running game. But Sam Houston is susceptible in their defensive secondary, and Aaron Roderick needs to figure out who's going to step up at the wide receiver spot, and this is a great opportunity to see some of the progress that's been made throughout camp. So I think this is a Keaton Slovis game. I think that Slovis is going to throw the ball a lot, and BYU will look to move the ball through the air, get chunk plays, and get some of these receivers going. I don't know if Cody Epps is going to be healthy. Don't know if he's going to go in this one. I think Keanu Hill, Chase Roberts, I know that they've been banged up a little bit in fall camp. Nothing serious, but we'll see if they go tomorrow night. Keelan Marion, Darius Lassiter, Parker Kingston. Who's going to step up? Who's going to show that they have chemistry with Keaton Slovis? I think this is the Slovis game. I'm expecting a lot of pass attempts, pass yards, all of that good stuff. On the defensive side of the ball, this is a really curious game because you want to have this tendency, if you're Jay Hill or if you're a BYU fan, to say, don't show the playbook. Don't show everything. Go vanilla, to be vanilla, because you could beat Sam Houston, you could beat SUU, and you don't have to show anything. That's true. That could be the route that Jay Hill decides to go. On the other hand, BYU plays a former FCS school at Sam Houston. They play an FCS school in SUU, and then they go and they play maybe their toughest game on the schedule at Arkansas. And it's a brand new defensive scheme. You've already got injuries at the safety position. Do you really want the first time you're trying some of those exotic things, you're opening up the playbook to really see how your guys have learned the defense throughout the year, throughout the offseason, throughout fall camp? Do you want that to be on the road at Arkansas? I don't know if you do. It's a brand new scheme. I kind of expect Jay Hill, at least in this game, to open things up a little bit more than maybe he normally would in a season opener against a team like Sam Houston. Not because BYU is going to have to, but I think that Jay Hill's going to have to see what he's got. He's got to see which defensive tackles are going to step up and become that guy. He's got to see which edge rushers are going to actually get to the quarterback in a game setting. He's got to see which cornerback, which linebacker, who has learned their assignments the best so that they can be prepared when they go to Arkansas and when they start Big 12 conference play. I get the idea of staying vanilla, and I think normally that's what Jay Hill would like to do. But given that we've never seen his defense in action, and this will be the first chance for these players to perform that defense in game action, I think Jay Hill's going to be a little bit more creative and open things up a little bit more than he would normally like to. So I am expecting a very, very aggressive defense, at least for the first half. Very aggressive, try to make some plays. They might get beat for some big plays as a result. They may miss some assignments as a result, but I think that's the process that Jay Hill will go through as he tries to learn what he's got on this team and who understands what from an assignment standpoint. So I'm expecting this game to be a lot of fun to watch. I do think there will be mistakes. I do think it will be a little bit ugly. That's just so many new faces, so many transfers on both sides of the ball for BYU. They're going to need some time. Fortunately, they've got 2 weeks that I think they're afforded a little bit of time. But we're not going to know at the end of tomorrow night definitively if BYU is a good team, a surprise team, or a bad team. We're still not going to know any of those things because this is a learning experience. This is a learning game in week 1. And that's kind of what I'm expecting. At the end of the day, final score, I don't know. I'll call it 38-14. That's kind of where my head is at right now. I think BYU shows enough on both sides of the ball that you feel good, you feel confident, but you're still a little uncertain when you're driving home and listening to Greg Wrubell in your car. Appreciate you guys tuning into the Daily Dose. It's here. It's game day. Almost. It's football season. Cannot wait for you guys to and us to all do this together here at the Daily Dose. Until next time, give them hell.